And I went to where I had known the photo workroom to be in every previous visit to Gillette. And I opened the door and it was just dark in there, like kind of creepy. And I was like, what the hell? And I start wandering around. And I realized pretty quickly that I'm like in some random offices, which I think had been moved there to a sort of like temporary basis. And I opened a door, there's a desk in front of me, and I just took like a step backwards and I looked at like the placard on the door and it said Bill Belichick.
It's the beginning of the week, and that means it is time once again for MASL Mondays, the show where we break down everything that happened over the weekend, and sometimes even further back into the midweek for all of you. I am your host, Adam Snavely, joined as always, except for last week, by my co-host, Pablo Maurer. Pablo, what's up? How you doing?
Good. I just put an engine in a BMW M5. That's how I spent my morning, and then I spent about 2 hours researching a upcoming soccer culture piece. So
I think
my brain's doing good.
Told me some of that soccer culture piece as well.
Yeah. I'm still recovering from last night's San Diego Tacoma explosion. So
Yeah, it's funny because San Diego Tacoma explosion almost sounds like a hidden team that's in the league that nobody knows about.
I don't know, like a prog rock band or something like that. Like San Diego Tacoma explosion opening for Yes at I don't know.
Anyways. It's a Rush cover band.
Yeah, we're off to a horrible start here.
We're off to an awful start, but I'm glad that you mentioned San Diego and Tacoma because that is where we're going to go first. It was a barn burner, and it wasn't really expected to be, mostly because Tacoma has very little shot now of qualifying for the playoffs. San Diego has been qualified for the playoffs for forever, it feels like.
Since like the early 80s, I think.
Yeah, since they've lost since the prog rock days.
Right.
They've lost. I mean, officially, they haven't really even lost a game. They have lost one game in overtime, and that is the only blemish on their record. Other than that, they are pretty much perfect. And so wasn't really expecting as crazy of a game as we got, specifically in that second half, the fourth quarter, just lead changes like crazy. San Diego, obviously extremely shorthanded, a lot of injuries that they are dealing with. You had some unlucky just absences, specifically with Serda, who was out due to illness, I believe. Injuries that occurred in game, and it was really kind of the walking wounded for one of the deeper teams in the league, even that were struggling to deal with it. But San Diego still manages to pull it out, really does the thing that good teams do, and just, I mean, I guess knuckles down when it comes time for it. Pablo, what were some of your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I mean, just San Diego's depth, really, obviously, even missing 4, 5, 6 players, a couple players picking up injuries during the game, they're still sort of able to pull things out. Also, my usual non-soccer takeaways were that the Stars have probably the best jerseys in the league. The Sockers, who typically have some of the best, were wearing, I think, some of the worst last night, but that's just purely the opinion of this, whatever, podcaster, videocaster, whatever I'm called. But yeah, obviously. And again, just sort of like the Sockers, even when the chips are entirely down, can still sort of overwhelm you in the end. Although I'd be curious to see how many guys they can get healthy. Obviously, it's a pretty bad time of the year to have 5, 6 key players out, to have 39, 40-year-olds playing that typically don't even see minutes. So we'll have to see how it pans out for them going forward.
Yeah, very rough. I do agree with you with the Tacoma Stars jersey take, and I would actually take it a step further. I think that the Tacoma Stars have some of the best soccer jerseys in North America. Just straight up, any league.
Low bar.
Doesn't matter. Yes. I mean, I'm particularly partial to this new one that I'm currently wearing. Shouts out to the USL, San Diego Loyal. I've been wearing a lot of upstate New York gear to start with this podcast, so I figured today was a good day to show some love to the West Coast for once. But yeah, I do love the Tacoma Stars kits. Both of them are really, really great. I love the white look that goes down into the blue with the blue shorts and socks. I think it's one of the best looks in the league. But yeah, you are correct. It is an awful time to deal with a lot of injuries, illnesses, everything that San Diego does have to deal with. But you also, again, see how deep they are, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the MVP discussion, I think, later on in this. And when we were discussing some of the MVP stuff before the show and kind of building this week's show, I made the statement, all of San Diego's options are a little bit hurt by the fact that there are so many good options that you could choose from San Diego to pick out for an MVP discussion. And somebody in this game, you have to look at Tavoy Morgan, a hat trick in the second half, really, really stepped up for San Diego when they needed a spark multiple times in this game.
Yes. Speaking of MVP, the MVP discussion, obviously preeminent sort of perennial MVP candidate, Craig Childs, missing this one, wearing, I think, jeans and a trucker hat, clearly was not going to play in this one. And yeah, you see Morgan obviously step up in his absence. Stars sort of pushed back. Nick Pereira with an absolute banger. Nick Pereira, who I only just realized apparently is also the GM of NWSL side OL Reign. Learn something new every single day. But yeah, again, I mean, San Diego just too much. Wore Tacoma down the end. So
yeah, I have to give a shout out to Nick Pereira, who is near the top of the league in terms of points, who his goals and assists that he has registered this season, despite the fact that Tacoma is probably not even close to making the playoffs and will not be. They're not really considered one of the better teams in the league, but still, as Nick Pereira goes, so goes the Tacoma Stars, and he really, really, that was a really nice goal, just a great set play, and he picked out the top corner just about as well as anybody could expect anyone to pick out the top corner here. Like you said, great game from Tavoy Morgan, good game from Brandon Escoto. We had a lot of fun talking about how nice of a game Pee Wee Ortega had. So a very, very fun game in San Diego. A big shout out to the Tacoma Stars for the fight that they showed against the best team in the league. Ultimately, however, San Diego pulls it out and they take the victory in that one. Other games that we had going on in the league this weekend, we had a pretty consequential 2-game series between the Milwaukee Wave and the St. Louis Ambush, and it was kind of an interesting series as you had an even split. The Milwaukee Wave take the first game while the Ambush take the second game. Both teams won away from home, and it was kind of an oddball, matchup in that sense. It felt a lot like in the first game, Milwaukee was kind of playing a little bit of a rope-a-dope style. There wasn't much high pressure. They were trying to limit a lot of the St. Louis Ambush chances on the break. And obviously, when you are St. Louis, you have somebody like Mo Ndiaye that is obviously a threat. Just you're constantly threatening from those transition opportunities. And it worked. Also, you had Joey Capinos stepping up for Milwaukee in a big way with Matt Perella out. So Joey Capinos comes in. Milwaukee takes first game 3-2. Second game, a bit of the reverse. Milwaukee looked like they were trying to press a little bit more of their advantage, and St. Louis really made them pay. Just really some really nice attacking sequences in this game from St. Louis, and Milwaukee just couldn't capitalize on the opportunities. And I want to talk a little bit about the playoff implications here, because if Milwaukee won both those games, they would have the pole position, but now St. Louis has that 8th spot in the playoffs with Milwaukee still behind them. Milwaukee, I think, has a little bit of an easier schedule. St. Louis has to play Kansas City a few times. And then lurking down further, you have Utica City, who do have the toughest schedule of all of them. Pablo, any thoughts on who your favorite of those 3 teams to grab that final playoff spot would be?
Yeah, I mean, St. Louis is just the better team. Even if they have to play KC, best team in the division 3 times. Milwaukee does have a bit of an easier schedule. It certainly would be ridiculous to count them out. Utica, really tough to see them making a move. Even with the extra game, they're playing Florida, the Blast, Chihuahua, Tacoma. Even Tacoma, sort of, as they proved last night, can be difficult to deal with. It's sort of tough to see them making a move, but who knows? You never know with the MASL, right? I think that's the league's official slogan. I'm not sure, and trademarking it right now. Very creative.
And I think it's especially true of the St. Louis ambush. Like we've said many times before, they're a team that gives up a lot of goals. They're a team that scores a lot of goals. You kind of never know what you're going to get from them in many ways. I do have to give them a little bit of a shout out in that that first game against actually, no, not the first game. In the second game against Milwaukee, the game that they won, there were plenty of moments where they were actually defending quite well as a unit, and they did really, really well at shutting down Milwaukee's power play opportunities. And that was very important towards securing that victory. So I will say, shout out to you, St. Louis. You have some really excellent defensive moments. I'm going to specifically compliment your defense. Please send all of our hate mail to Phil, and that's just how we're gonna work all of that. So,
alternatively, if you work for the St. Louis Ambush, please send all of your free jerseys or gear to Adam and I, etc.
Also true.
Yeah.
Always a big fan of City Skyline gear, and the light blue, pink thing and black. I'm into it. I can dig it. I like those jerseys.
I take almost anything for free, so it's fine. Anyways.
Well, we all know that.
Yeah.
Oh, and I guess now is a good time, now that we have talked about St. Louis and Milwaukee a bit, let's get into the MVP discussion a little bit more. We already talked about San Diego's candidates, but we do have to talk about Ian Bennett for Milwaukee. He has 41 goals this season. He is leading the league in goals far and away. He's also leading the league in points with 50. And the question we have on this doc is, can he win MVP of the league without making the playoffs? And I guess my counter question is, could we not give him the MVP considering how many goals he has scored given Milwaukee's current position? Because without Ian Bennett, Milwaukee is probably one of the worst teams in the league.
Right. I think by most definitions, he should be the MVP. This is always a frustrating argument to me, just in sports generally, the idea of, how do you define it? Is it the best player in the league? Is it the most valuable player to the team, et cetera, et cetera? I remember in 2012, I've covered DC United for so long, Dwayne DiRosario, speaking of, I wouldn't call him an MASL legend, but I'd call him an MASL participant. MASL participant Dwayne DiRosario won the MVP while playing for DC United. They missed the playoffs, but he was clearly their most valuable player, and he was, proportionally sort of more valuable to them than any other player was to any other team in the league. So I think he has to get it. I don't know. I've always found this, you can't win it if you don't make the playoffs argument sort of ridiculous. What about you?
I agree with you. I think if we're going by the literal definition of most valuable, that is certainly going to be up there, even though it kind of, like we said, it punishes players that are having great season on better teams somewhat in some ways. And we've already said it, but you could pick out several of those San Diego Sockers players, Brandon Escoto, Craig Childs, now this last week in Tavoy Morgan. You could pick out a lot of those players and say, these people should be up for the MVP discussion, but to their team, because they have so many people, they are maybe inherently slightly less valuable. And that's just how it goes. You also have some other candidates elsewhere. You have Pereira's down in Florida. He is just behind Ian Bennett in terms of points. You could pick out somebody like Mo Ndiaye in St. Louis. You could pick out a goalkeeper, Juan Gamboa in Dallas. Obviously, a massive, massive part of all of the success that they have so much of the time. I believe he's leading the league in saves as well still.
He's kept them in like, a half dozen games this year, like near single-handedly, so it's one of those things, where it's like, if you define it as the most valuable player to the team, certainly he has to be in that conversation, although that again is, like, can a goalie win the MVP award? That's sort of another, like, I don't know. There's like a lot of minefields with that one,
Yeah. I mean, shouts out to the goalies. I know that you are some of those people that are never going to get the love that you probably deserve so much of the time. But but we love you and we respect you, and we think that the MASL should incorporate goalie wars. But that's a private discussion that me and Pablo have almost all the time, almost every day. In fact, we just text each other saying
multiple times a day. It's a concerning amount, I would say. Exactly.
We
Whatever,
need professional help. Moving on. A big result for the Baltimore Blast this weekend, beating Florida 12-4, which I don't think Florida has lost at home this season. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but they certainly have not given up 12 goals at home this season, and just and kind of an unbelievable result to the extent that I think beginning in the third quarter and almost the entire fourth quarter, Florida was playing with the sixth attacker. It almost felt like they had already accepted that the result wasn't going to go their way and said, we're going to go practice some strategies out. We're going to go practice with a sixth attacker for a full quarter. So shout out to the Baltimore Blast, just an absolutely banger of a match from them. I believe Florida is just getting back from a pretty lengthy travel period. They were out on the West Coast a bunch, so some tired legs probably at play for Florida, but kind of an interesting result to occur just before the playoffs for Baltimore here.
Yeah, Baltimore, like Phil and I were talking about this before the show too. It seemed like they do this every single year where they're a bit erratic for the, opening phase of the season, but when push comes to shove, towards the playoffs, they start stringing results together, which is what's kept them perennially competitive, for not just the history of the MASL, but obviously at MASL and going way back. We already did our Baltimore Blast history segment, so I'm not going to go into it, but it's like you get a familiar feeling when it's, gets to be this time of the year and you sort of start seeing them string results together. They're not a team that I would sort of count out in the playoffs either. I think they can make a pretty deep run.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Baltimore Blast history, Tony Donatelli turning back the clock once again, 3 goals in this game. Melo, 4 goals, 3 assists. That's a big game here. Elsewhere around the league this weekend, you had Dallas taking out the Comets in Kansas City 7-3. Jamie Lovegrove and Juan Gamboa had some good games there. The Chihuahua Savage absolutely pacing the Ontario Fury in Mexico, 11-4, and then 6-1. And 1 is never a scoreline you like to see in MASL. You also had a couple of, outside of games, some news notes. Mesquite is coming back next season. We're reviving some of that Dallas rivalry between Mesquite and the Dallas Sidekicks. Head coach Tatu is back in the league, and I know I am excited for that. I think Pablo is also excited for that. And finally, we have the MASLs on Twitch now. So we're broadcasting some games live on Twitch. You can find those games at twitch.tv/MASL_soccer. And I believe there are also some MASL_soccer 2 and soccer 3 channels that you can find games on from time to time as well. So keep an eye out for Twitch. The final game that we do want to take account of is Utica City versus Harrisburg. There was an MASL game that occurred that was important. Joey Tavernese had a good game. Andrew Hoxie had a really great goal, an even better impression of Daniel Day-Lewis as Butcher Bill in Gangs of New York with that mustache. Pablo, I want to talk about the Mascot Game.
I, predictably enough, also want to talk about the Mascot Game. It's the greatest spectacle in all of professional sports.
Absolutely.
It's right up there with my first job growing up in Nashville was at the Nashville Sounds baseball stadium, which is like a AA, I want to say, team. And so I was exposed to like all the minor league promotions. So really short of a monkey riding on the back of a dog at like a monkey rodeo, short of a monkey rodeo, I think a mascot game is the next best thing.
Oh man,
certainly more humane, I think, than a monkey rodeo. Not positive. But yeah,
sure.
Definitely the weirdest, most bizarre, surreal entertainment you could imagine.
This was up there in terms of surreal and bizarre entertainment, I have to say. There was certainly a meta that formed in the middle of the game where it appeared that 75% of the mascots participating could not see outside of the 5 feet directly in front of them. And then there was the 25% of mascots that did have a range of motion as well as vision that were just dominant in this game. I also think there were 3 different Dunkin' Donuts representatives in this mascot game. There was a hot beverage, there was an iced beverage, and there was a donut. There's a lot of different mascots at play here.
The donut had the nicer first touch. Also, there was just a straight up virus, I want to say. Like the mascot for local pharmacy is a virus, which is kind of questionable to begin with, I think. But he was also one of the worst players. Whoever's in there, I don't know, is one of the worst players, But yeah, Adam, if I could regale you with a story that might take about a minute and a half, I have my own mascot game experience. I was covering a New England Revolution game at Gillette Stadium years ago, and they were renovating that end of Gillette, and I was shooting the game. I was like taking photos, and I went to where I had known the photo workroom to be in every previous visit to Gillette, and I opened the door, and it was just dark in there, like kind of creepy, and I was like, what the hell? And I start wandering around, and I realized pretty quickly that I'm like in some random offices, which I think had been moved there a sort of like temporary basis. And I opened a door, and there's a desk in front of me, and I just took like a step backwards, and I looked at like the placard on the door, and it said Bill Belichick. And I was literally in Bill Belichick's office, and just completely expected to like turn around and just see him standing there, probably in like a hoodie with the sleeves cut off, just like, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna die now. Like, or like maybe the militiamen would have surrounded me with their muskets or something. But yeah.
Yes. I was going to ask if there was a closet just full of sleeveless hoodies.
Yeah, no, and so that's tangentially related, at least to there was a mascot game at halftime of that game, featuring the Dunkin' Donuts iced cup of coffee, who has no life in his eyes. I just want to put that out there. None whatsoever.
I caught a screenshot of the Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee in goal in the Utica City halftime mascot game, and there was clearly just an existential crisis that was happening somewhere.
Yes, it's a look that says like, I have never known the love that humans speak of, or something like that, right? Like, anyways,
but you know what?
Move on, I think
we should probably move on, and I should also make it clear: the mascots, they're not paid to be good at soccer. They're paid to make us feel things. And I have to say, I definitely felt, I don't know if it was joy, I don't know if it was schadenfreude, but I definitely felt some emotions watching the mascot game at halftime of Utica City and Harrisburg. Shout out to Utica City for beating the Harrisburg Heat.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service. Oh, Pablo, goals of the weekend. Any notable plays that we're looking at this weekend?
I mean, I think that's a pretty clear candidate for the goal of the weekend, correct?
Well, sure. This weekend is a little bit unfair to everybody else, thanks to Ricardo Dieguez and his absolutely bonkers scissors kick, bicycle kick. It was almost like a 3/4. Like, it wasn't exactly sideways, but it also wasn't all the way vertical. It was just picturesque. I know that much. And it kind of made it unfair to literally everyone else.
This is America, Adam. We call everything that isn't a traditional goal a bicycle kick.
That's true.
Yeah. Even if you have one foot planted, or, so it was very clearly a scissor kick, I think.
Yeah. I did put down as an honorable mention, just so other people could get some shine. I think a little bit of an under the radar goal. Jeff Michaud from the St. Louis Ambush in that first game against Milwaukee. Just a really, really nice dummy to release Mo Indiai. To release Mo Indiai in the corner. Great movement, loops all the way around, ends up getting a wide open shot. Just a really, really nice team play that I really enjoyed. Did you have a particular favorite goal outside of the Dieguez goal?
Yeah, I mean, 2 great goals in that Tacoma San Diego game. You had that Corey Kite's goal sort of smashed into the upper 90 with like 0 backlift, 0 wind up. I always love those goals, or player manages to generate like a tremendous amount of power with very little movement somehow. And then we already mentioned the Nick Pereira upper 90 off the restart. Absolutely spectacular goal. Nick Pereira also is like an example of I mean, any player who's over 6 feet tall in the indoor game just looks like an absolute giant or something like
Yes.
that. Which added to me, like, I think it adds to the spectacularness of the goal. It's like, this like massive human being with that level of precision, and power. So yeah, we'll give some more shine to the deck for sure.
Absolutely. I do remember when I was at the Ontario Fury and Chihuahua game a little over a week ago, Frank Tayu just looked like he could step on every single person, like just or step completely over them for that matter. It's always fun to see the tall guys in the indoor game because you have to have such quick reactions and be fast on your feet. And so seeing people that are that big still be able to compete in this specific game is just kind of fun. Moment of the weekend for me personally, just that fourth quarter between San Diego and Tacoma. You have the Nick Pereira goal to take the lead again for Tacoma, and then almost immediately you have Tavoy Morgan tying the ball up again to the Brandon Escoto eventual winner. Just some really, really exciting indoor soccer being played in that San Diego and Tacoma game.
Yeah, I think for me it was probably maybe the donuts pass to the iced cup of coffee, who played it past the outstretched hands of, you'll have to excuse me, Utica listeners, but whoever the mascot for your minor league baseball team is, he appears to be some sort of purple or green dinosaur. I don't know, man. I think probably the entire mascot game was my moment of the weekend because I have no life. So,
and sometimes that's just the way it should be.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't have it any other way. Snaves. So
and neither would I. And with that, I think our time is up for this week's episode of MASL Mondays. A lot of mascot talk, but if you didn't come here for mascot talk, you should have known us better because we're idiots, and that's our brand.
Yeah, our time may very well be up for this entire series after that mascot talk. It's hard to say. Yeah.
We will be back. Hopefully, we will be back. Hopefully, they invite us back next weekend to talk about some of the playoff action that is happening. Not playoff action, the playoff qualification action as these teams enter the final stretch of games before the playoffs. But as always, my name is Adam. This is Pablo to my right or left.
You're pointing the wrong way.
It's like flipped on my camera, so it's difficult. But Pablo is next to me. We will see you guys next time.